So one of the stats we would, Andrew and I would cite, it's in his book, The War on Normal People, his older book. But he would talk about what happens when men and women lose their jobs. And so the job, and particularly in older generations, the job was not just your job. It was your livelihood, your purpose. You are the provider, you're the man, you're the breadwinner, whatever definition. But there's a lot of identity associated with it, particularly for men. And the numbers bear that out. When women lose their jobs, they generally stay, like their behavior doesn't really change. They stay productive. They either become more caretakers in the home, or they join nonprofits, or they get involved in school, and they essentially stay flat in terms of their overall well-being and productivity. Men disintegrate. Men turn to, by the numbers, video games, alcohol, sometimes drugs, and pornography. And
or suicide.
Yes, they get, and then they get depressed and so very, very serious mental health issues and suicide. How have you seen that the element of strength play in? And I really want to dive in because there's also emotional strength too, which I think women are, based on what you're talking about, probably stronger emotionally than men. So there's two different types of strength here. How much that responsibility kind of weighs in on people's relationship with their gender, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting question. Feminism and gender equality actually acts as a buffer for male suicide. Okay, because what we find throughout history is exactly what you're saying. When there's economic crises, when a lot of people lose their jobs, and particularly COVID was the first actually extremely unequal recession in history where women were the most hurt. But if you look at 2008, for example, the last recession we had, men lost a lot of jobs, right? Women did too, but manufacturing jobs, right? Like when we think about the jobs that were really lost, a lot of men lost their jobs, right? And so what happens is normally you have an increase in male suicide, right? When you have higher unemployment with men because of everything that you've said. But when you have a society where women actually contribute equally, right? That it's not just men are the breadwinner and women stay at home, that women are the breadwinner too. Male and female suicide rates are not as skewed. And that's because, the thing you can infer from that, which the researcher who studied this inferred this, is, when you put all of that burden on one person and on one gender, and it's also on something that you cannot control. I mean, the both of us could lose our jobs tomorrow, right? This is not something that's, you earn, right? It's out of your control. But if the only thing that makes you a man is being a breadwinner, and that's no longer available to you, of course you're going to think that you're a burden. Of course you're going to think that there's nothing good that you can do. You're going to have a crisis of identity, and that's what we're seeing men experience. And again, it's like, if we could degender working, if we could degender breadwinning as an identity, and by doing that, give men more flexibility and possibility and imagination about how to be men in society and how to be useful, or, what their purpose can be. Like, then you have such an expansive opportunity, and you have men who aren't as, completely distraught and destroyed if they lose their jobs. And so I think so much about that, about how, these roles are made up. These roles are just like, again, we can go back into capitalism and all that stuff, but like literally, like these were just inventions. Like, women of color have always worked. Like it wasn't a thing. Like it was just like a white working class model, right, of the nuclear family that men work and women.
Norman Rockwell painting, whatever it is. Yeah,
exactly. And so if we were to sort of just give people more flexibility when it comes to that, it would just make everyone, much happier. And I get so sad, to think that a man would feel like a burden because, he's not able to provide, and also providing, women provide by doing all kinds of things, right? Like even if we think about prototypical, like a stay-at-home dad or mom is providing. Oh my God. Like that's providing care.
My mom was
that's providing
mom. And she worked harder than my dad in many ways.
Exactly.
And,
it's just
added more value to the community than my father did. And my dad, nothing against my dad. My dad's ministry, or, you know, the church's ministry that I grew up in, or wherever he is, one of the things, like the most common things, we bring all these men together, which is great. And it would be called, my dad does one called iron sharpens iron, which is a Bible verse, like show iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another, which I do think like brotherhood and sisterhood, I think are really important particularly for men to actually talk about this stuff. But one of the things, like the most common thing we get at these, it's wild, is that the men say their wives nag them. She's nagging me. She's telling me to take the trash out, telling me I'm not doing this. And what my dad and the conference would say to the guys, and I want your opinion on whether this is healthy or counterproductive to what we're talking about here, because this is where I think the devil's in the details and stuff. What they would say at the church would be, well, what is she nagging you to do, is what the question is. And she's like, well, she wants me to take the trash out. She wants me to make the bed. He's like, well, are you the man of the house? Like, yes. Like, well, whose job is it to make sure the house is looking good? He's like, it's my job. Like, yes. So like, what is she nagging you to do, bud? She's nagging you to do your job. And like, thank God she's there, because it sounds like you wouldn't fucking do it. So when we tell men this, we being like the leaders of this, a light bulb goes off. And to me, I always felt like it was shifting their definition of masculinity, where I don't have to be like, yeah, rah, you get that from me, but it's like, no, I'm actually here to help and support you and some protection, some love, but a responsibility piece. Thoughts on that? Like, how off base is that church in Florida talking about that at the moment?
No, I think that's wonderful. and again, it's like, I think it's such a great way to frame this conversation, right? That, again, I just want to degender shit. Like, I just want to degender, yeah, keeping your home clean. Like, that should just be something you do, period. Like not something that anyone has to, ask you to do because their gender is right. And you find this with LGBTQ couples. LGBTQ couples have really higher levels of satisfaction in their relationships than straight couples.
Because there's no norm. It's like, who fits?
Well, that's the thing.
This is what the man is supposed to do, and it's two women.
Yes. It's just like, what do you like to do? And, it's our house. And how are we going to... There's just a more equitable separation of work, because there's not predetermined rules that are made up by who the fuck knows. And there's more freedom, right? It's all about freedom. Like, truly, it is about freedom. And, with your example, the other thing I was just thinking about, which really, again, is such a detriment to our society, that we consistently are trained not to listen to women and not to believe women and to blame women. Like, we blame women for everything. And it is so, again, I mean, there's examples of, we blame women for their own sexual assault. Like, we blame women for, right, like not smiling enough.
Andrew talks about being dehuman, where you don't look at women as equal
exactly.
as a human.
It's a dehumanization.
That needs to be taught. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think because biologically, if you're just cavemen.
I don't think that boys are like that, though. Like, I don't think that there's something natural. Again, it comes back to the research separating, and I think we need more research that asks these nuanced questions, that instead of seeing men as a monolith, is interested in how they, what they believe about masculinity and how that ends up determining a lot of different things. Like I think we assume certain we did this with women, right? We assumed women were just kinder and on their periods and more emotional. And it's like, these things are so wrong. Like, emotional. Do you want to talk about how, like, every war, like in history, like, and this is not to say again that women are more pacific, but we've create, our society creates certain rules, certain norms, certain scripts, and then we follow them. And then it's like, I want people to be interested in figuring out who they are authentically, right? And maybe it means that, you're a go-getter and you have more of an aggressive personality, right? In that way. And like, that's who you are. There are women who are like that. Like, it's fine. But is that really who you are? Or are you playing a part? And when it comes to, again, just listening to women, that's I think everyone wants something that, like, a marriage that doesn't end in divorce. Like, I think no one's like in it to like divorce, but the number one factor that leads to a lasting marriage, heterosexual marriage, is a man that accepts his wife's influence. Okay. And this is from the Gottman Institute. They've done years and years of research on this. And it's very simple, right? It just means when she says something, you listen. When she says something, you don't say, no, you're wrong, or, oh, you're making things up, like the way that we talked about women in our society.